Okay, so this is our first section of notes that we'll cover. This is the phylum Mollusca or mollusks. Uh, their kingdom is Animalia because once again they're animals. Phylum is Mollusca. This is the second largest phylum within our kingdom Animalia. There's more than 47,000 different species, so there's a ton of members within this phylum. Okay, these are our first animals to actually have a true coelom, which means once again a body cavity. So this is our first coelomate body plan. If you guys remember from our simple invertebrates chart, we had our pseudocoeloms and we had our acoelomate animals in that category. But now we have our first true body cavity. They're found in both marine, freshwater, and then there's also some that are going to be found on land as well. Okay, so the characteristics of mollusks. The first one, once again, they have a true body cavity. So this is important. This is new when we talk about the changes that take place within our organisms. And as we continue on for the rest of the year, we'll get more advanced. And so a coelomate body plan is going to be more advanced than the two that we've talked to or about before spring break. They have bilateral symmetry, which we know is the most advanced type of symmetry. They have a three-part body plan. This three-part body plan is going to be made up of the visceral mass, which is going to be the central section. This is where the organs will actually be found. They have a mantle as well. That mantle is what you'll probably see as the main part of the mollusk, depending on what you're looking at. The mantle is actually heavy folds of tissue that surround the visceral mass and protect it. This may look like a shell. In some cases, it also may be like a hardened plate that's you'll find in like your squid. And then there's the muscular foot, and this is going to be used for locomotion. So it may look different depending on the type of mollusk, but each mollusk is going to have these three parts. So you can see here in the picture, you have your mantle, which is going to be that blue line, and surrounding that, that's what the shell is going to be built out of. And then on the inside of the shell and the mantle is going to be your visceral mass. So that's where you'll find the heart. That's where you'll find their intestines as well. Okay, and then at the very bottom, you can see is going to be the foot of our mollusk as well. So this is going to be like a slug or a snail in this case, and you'll be able to see those three parts in that case. Next is most of our mollusks are going to have a shell. Okay, it's either going to be one part or two parts depending on the different class of our mollusks. And this, once again, is used in order to protect that relatively soft body that they have or that visceral mass. And then they have a special type of feeding structures. They're called radula. It's a tongue-like structure. It has little tiny sharp razor teeth attached to that tongue. There could be thousands of those teeth, and they are used in order for them to scrape their food. And so what you'll see is like for slugs or snails, they'll use that in order to scrape through plant matter. Others will use it to drill holes into their prey. And so you'll find that in all of the different classes except for our bivalves or the class Bivalvia. Okay. Next, we have, once again, we're talking about more advanced animals. And so these are going to have more complex organ systems. We have now 5 different type of organ systems. We have a digestive system, an excretory system, a circulatory system, respiratory system, and reproductive system as well. And so we'll get into more details about that here as well. So let's talk about digestive system. Okay, the digestive system, if you remember back to our sponges, all they had was an opening. Food would go in and then it would exit out. Same with our jellyfish, okay, and our sea anemones. Now we actually have a one-way digestive system. We had this with our flatworms, our roundworms. And so food would go in through the mouth and then it will exit out the anus on the other end. The excretory system, in order to help recover nutrients before that waste is excreted, it's really important for this group that they have a way to recover nutrients. This is going to be our first animals that are going to be found uh, living more complexly on land. Okay, meaning that they're going to be found in all different types of environments. And so, in order to help recover whatever nutrients they can from the food that they eat before it gets excreted as waste, they have what are known as nephridia, or tiny little tube like structures that are there to help recover those molecules that they need. So, for instance, sugars, we know that every animal needs some type of food source, and usually that's going to give them their glucose. They need salts in order to maintain homeostasis, and then also water as well, because we know all life needs some form of water. Okay, and then after that nutrients is recovered, then it's going to be the waste will be excreted out the anus. And so you could see here on our snail down below, we have our nephridium that's going to be located there. We'll see this later on as well with other organisms, but this helps recover nutrients before that waste then is excreted out the anus. So circulatory system. This is our first animal to actually have a three-chambered heart. Uh, Although it has a three-chambered heart, it's going to have an open circulatory system. So it's not the most complex just yet. Uh, what that means is the heart is actually going to be pumping blood, and then that blood will just flow through the body and then rely on just the force of that heart sucking up blood and then pumping it out again for it to circulate. Okay, that doesn't mean it has any blood vessels or veins. Okay, but it's going to be more open on the inside. So what this allows for is nutrients to actually diffuse through the blood and then be carried throughout the rest of the body, because it doesn't have veins and arteries to carry that nutrients from the heart to the muscles. This is its way of getting that throughout the whole body. So it's not as complex as a closed circulatory system. While most of our mollusks are going to have an open circulatory system, both our squid and octopi, or octopuses, will have closed circulatory system. So they're a little bit more advanced than that of the rest of our mollusks. Respiratory system. Most will have gills, as they're going to be located in some type of water. However, there's going to be some that live on land as well. So, like our snails and our slugs, that are going to rely on an actual thin membrane that surrounds their body and will allow for them to absorb oxygen through that thin membrane. That acts as their lung. Okay, so they don't have lungs like you and I do, but they breathe through their skin. And they must keep that membrane moist. Okay, that's why what you'll see is usually snails and slugs will be more active at night. They don't want to dry out. And then they're also going to be more active after a rainfall as well. That's also why if you were to go put salt on a snail or a slug, you'll see them start to shrivel up. Sorry. And what you'll see there is you're drying out that membrane, and so you're basically suffocating that snail or that slug. Okay, sea snails, they're kind of unique. They actually will just diffuse oxygen through their skin. They're kind of a mixture between the two, as they will once again have to get their oxygen from the water that surrounds their body. Okay, how they reproduce. Most are going to be heterosexual, meaning once again there's going to be a male and a female. Okay, however, some are going to be hermaphroditic, which means they contain both the male and female reproductive structures. What's kind of cool is that there's some of these organisms, like our oysters and our sea slugs, that can actually change their sex. So two males may meet up, and then one may actually change to be a female in order to for the two to reproduce. So that's unique to our mollusks. Okay, one characteristic that goes along with that reproductive structure or reproductive system is going to be the trochophore. The trochophore is going to be a free-swimming larva stage found in some mollusks and also in some polychaetae worms. We talked about polychaetae worms in our simple invertebrates. They're these little tiny structures that are used, and they will have little hair-like structures called cilia in order to swim throughout the water. But this is one way that they could actually reproduce as well. and they come in all different shapes and sizes. They can look almost like a raspberry, all the way down to uh, more of just a group of cells. Okay, so let's talk about the three different classes that we'll cover. The first one is gastropoda. Gastro actually means stomach, and poda means foot. So what you'll see is all of our mollusks are going to have the ending poda. So they'll all have some type of foot in their name. And so this case, it's called the stomach foot because that's what they look like. They just look like their locomotive structure, that muscular foot, is going to be where most of their organs are going to be found, and once again, where their stomach is going to be found. This contains both our snails and our slugs. This could be your sea snails, but also your terrestrial ones as well. So we can find them in marine, freshwater, and terrestrial environments. That foot is adapted for locomotion. So whether it's swimming through the water or moving on land, they have been adapted for better movement. In order for, once again, to keep that body moist and that membrane for our terrestrial snails and slugs, they must secrete some type of mucus around the foot in order to keep it moist and allow for to dissolve oxygen into its body. It will have tentacles on top of its head. The terrestrial ones usually do, in order for them to see. This once again allows for them to see things ahead and is going to be more advantageous than, if you remember, our flatworms that had just those eye spots. And then in this case, most of our gastropods are going to be herbivores. Some will be predators, but they usually will prey on other gastropods as well. Class Bivalvia is our next class. This is going to contain our clams, our oysters, our scallops, and our mussels. Okay, Bivalvia, bi means two. Valvia, in this case, refers to the number of shells. So bivalvia actually is going to be our two-shelled mollusks. They will be found in both marine and freshwater. Unlike our snails and slugs, they don't have a distinct head region. But what they will have is they'll have a ganglia, which is once again a bundle of nerves that serves as a simple brain, and that's going to be located above their foot. They have hinged shells. So what that means is they can actually open and close, and they do that opening and closing by what are known as adductor muscles. Okay, when they contract or when they flex, they're actually going to close down. Okay, and when they relax, they will actually open up. So what you'll see is that most of these are going to be sessile, which means they once again will attach themselves to a surface, remain there for the rest of their life. However, you can actually see some of these bivalves moving through the water by opening and closing those shells, squirting water out, and almost like jetting their way through the water in order to reach a new location. With their reproduction, they will reproduce sexually. So that means there's going to be male and females. They will also rely on filtering nutrients out of the water. And they do such a good job at this that they can actually clear up a lot of dirty water by taking out the nutrients and eating that nutrients. They rely on these like little eyelash structures. You can see it in the pictures on both the top and the bottom. They rely on those. Those are their gills, but they rely on those gills in order to trap food, and then they bring those in to their body in order to eat. Okay, those gills will actually also be used for respiration or for breathing. Once again, diffusing oxygen into their bloodstream so that they can get that oxygen to the muscles that it has. Here's what you'll see is usually there's going to be within our bivalve, there's going to be water intake. And so what they'll do is they'll bring water in. It will run over the gills. Okay, and what will happen is as it goes over the gills, the food will actually be kind of washed its way towards the mouth region. That way it can be digested. And then whatever water is left out will be then excreted out the siphon at the end. So they basically suck water in and then push water out. And as they do that, they filter it or take that food particles out of the water. With our bivalves, they actually will have three layers that are going to be secreted by the mantle. The innermost layer is known as nacre. Nacre is sometimes also called mother of pearl. This is what will actually create the pearls within our bivalves. Thin layers start to build up over an irritant like sand or maybe some other type of sharp object. You can imagine that as they bring water in, that sand keeps rubbing up against the gills or against the soft body. And in order to protect that soft body, they will start to secrete this around it. And so you can actually build up pearls within these bivalves by actually placing some sand within them because they'll start to secrete this nacre around that sand. I wanted to show you this picture just to show you the adductor muscles here. There's one on either side. Once again, those are the muscles in order to open and close, allowing for the shell or the bivalve to once again open and close its two shells. They're pretty big. They're pretty muscular. This is if you ever have shucked clams before, you would actually, these are the ones that you're trying to cut open in order to open up the clam and get to the meat that's on the inside. So when you eat the meat, you're actually eating the visceral mass or that inside of that bivalve. One that we have a big problem with within the United States is known as the zebra mussel. It's actually an invasive species and has caused a ton of problems within our waterways. What you'll see here is they call it the zebra mussel because of those stripes, but they're really tiny. They can build up in large amounts and can be moved from one water source to another by attaching themselves to like the propeller blade of a boat. And then as you take your boat from one lake to another, they will drop off and then start to reproduce within that water source. They're so good at what they do, filtering that water, that they take the nutrients out, and it usually kills a lot of the fish within that water way. So what you can see here is that they were first brought in through the Great Lakes, where a lot of our boats that come from other countries will dock in order to export their goods. But you can see as time has elapsed, they've covered up the Great Lakes. They've taken over the Mississippi now as well, and they can be found all the way up into the Arkansas River as well. So we have some here in Wichita, in the Wichita area as well. So depending on what lake you go to, you may have to wash your boat off as you take it from your boat from one pond or one lake to another. The last class that we have is known as the cephalopods. Okay, cephala, we talked about that earlier. Cephala means head, and then pod is going to be meaning foot. So these are our head foots. Okay, so this is our squid, our octopi or octopuses, cuttlefish, and our nautilus as well. They're called this because of their large head, obviously, that's attached to their tentacles. The tentacles would be the foot in this case. And those tentacles will have both suction cups and or hooks. They lack an external shell except for the nautilus. However, what you'll find in the octopi and the squid is they usually will have a bony-like plate within their body. And so if you take advanced biology and you dissect your squid, you'll be able to find that plate. It's clear, it's pretty hard, it's pretty cool. It's almost like your nail in structure, but probably 4 or 5 inches tall and about 2 or 3 inches wide. Our cephalopods, we brought this up earlier, they have a closed circulatory system, so they're a little bit more advanced than our other classes of our mollusks. They have a well-developed brain and eye. Some of these guys can actually see. They're great predators because of that. They can see their prey in dark waters. They're able to also be camouflage their body. They're also thought to communicate with their pigments on their skin. but they will move through the water by what is known as a siphon. The siphon is this little pump. You can see it in the second picture, right below the eye, that opening. It looks like an O. Okay, that's going to be the siphon. They will build up water inside their body and then push it out through that siphon, and allows for them to make little jet-like movements through the water. As you know, our squid and our octopi have the ability to produce ink in order to escape their predators, and they'll use that as an evasive method as well in order to get away from uh, other fish. So our four different groups within our class cephalopods are going to be our cuttlefish. That will be the top left. Uh, top left. Our squid, which will be top right, and then our octopi or octopuses, which is going to be the top or bottom right, and then our nautilus, if you've seen those before, on the bottom left as well. Okay, so that's our notes for today. Hopefully, you're able to fill out your section for your assignment. Best of luck. Let me know how it goes.